Lebanon, where a serial pager attack in the past 24 hours has caused immense panic. At least 11 people are feared killed. Most of these are Hezbollah fighters. There are also some civilians who've been killed, and over 2,700, by some accounts close to 3,000 people have been injured in this pager attack in different parts of Lebanon. Now, pagers are a one-way communications equipment. In the era of mobile phones, almost nobody uses pagers anymore, except Hezbollah bought a large consignment of pagers, hoping that Israel will not be able to intercept their communication. So in a pager, there's a command center that sends a one-way alphanumeric communication on that paging device to the receiver. The receiver receives that message on his handset, and that message then is actioned upon. You usually need a phone to call back, but in this instance, when that pager beeped, when that message came, it led to a large explosion. It led to an explosion. You can see those images on your television screen. An explosion in a mall. When the pager beeped, the person picked up the pager and there was an explosion. And this explains. Now, when the pager was tied to the clip on the waistband or the belt, it led to injuries on the waist or around the waist. In some instances, people had the pagers in their front pockets, leading to casualties below the belt. In some instances, they were looking at that message, and that's why there are some facial injuries in instances. Reports say Iran's ambassador to Lebanon was also injured in one such attack, pager blast. He did not have a pager on his person, but his security officer and a Hezbollah fighter, he had the pager. It exploded, injuring even Iran's ambassador. Explosions were reported not just in the capital Beirut, but later even in Bekaa and Nabatia and Bin Jibel and several other parts of Lebanon. If you collate where all the attacks have taken place, and several OSINT or open source intelligence handles in Israel have done so, it actually indicates the movement and location of several Hezbollah fighters. There are multiple theories how the blast took place. Some experts are not ruling out the possibility of tampering of pagers, and recently, just a couple of months ago, Hezbollah had purchased a very large consignment of these pagers. Was it a supply chain tampering issue, or was some kind of a battery with some chemicals and perhaps explosives inside that pager, right from the point that they were manufactured, or when they were in the supply chain all the way to Hezbollah in Lebanon and detonated by a remote control? So it appears, according to some, that there was a code that made the battery overheat, a malware in the pager operating system, which led to coordinated explosions late yesterday evening. The Hezbollah has now issued an official statement. They've called the incident the biggest security breach, and they've directly blamed Israel for the pager attack. Hezbollah said that some of their fighters have been killed in the explosion, and that Israel would have to pay a price for this aggression.
حتى الآن سجلت غرفة العمليات الطوارئ الصحية بوزارة الصحة العامة أكثر من 2800 جريح. حالة تقريبا 200 منهم هي حالة حرجة استوجبت إما إجراء عمليات جراحية أو إدخال على أقسام العناية الفائقة. وسجل كذلك سقوط عدد من الشهداء. العدد لهلا 8 شهداء بما فيهم طفلة عمرها 8 سنين بالبقاع. حوالي الساعة 3:30 من عصر اليوم بدأت أعداد كبيرة من الجرحى بالتوافد على المستشفيات، وكانت هذه الجرحى مصابة بشكل أساسي بانفجار بأجهزة اتصال بيجر كانت حاملتها. الأعداد اللي وصلت على الطوارئ كانت أعداد كتير كبيرة، وكان واضح أنه هي بمختلف المناطق
I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point, we're gathering information. We'll continue to collect information. I don't have any public readout to give now, but we're collecting information in the same way that journalists are across the world to gather the facts about what might have happened.
When it comes to the Middle East, that is something that we have spoken to before. We are always obviously concerned about that. This particular incident, I don't want to get into speculate about it or get into hypotheticals about it. When we think about the conflict along the blue line between Israel and Hezbollah, it has gone on for way too long, long enough, and so it is in everyone's interest to resolve it quickly and diplomatically. So we continue to believe that there should be a diplomatic resolution to this.
The pager blast, I can tell you, to my knowledge, there's no U.S. involvement in this at all. Again, it's something that we're monitoring. And in terms of potential escalation, I go back to what I said earlier in terms of a key focus for this department and the U.S. government writ large is on working with partners in the region, to include Israel, to prevent the conflict between Israel and Hamas from spiraling into a wider conflict. And that includes the tensions along the Israel.
A series of pager blasts across Lebanon. Most of these pagers were with Hezbollah fighters. The information we've been able to glean seems to indicate that Hezbollah had bought a large consignment of pagers just a couple of months ago. What was their aim? Their aim was Israel was able to intercept mobile phone communication. But pagers have a one-way communication system. There is no conversation. Messages could also be given in a coded form. And that is why the moment a message is given, the Hezbollah fighters would carry out the command. But what happened? Apparently, there was tampering of the pagers. That's theory number one. Explosives of some kind were either placed during manufacturing or when the pagers were being supplied to the Hezbollah, moving from their area of location through the supply chain. So maybe the supply chain was tampered. Explosives were in the pager for quite some time, and you don't need a large amount. Embedded switch could be triggered remotely. The message detonates the explosive in the pager, which is what appears to have happened. Hacking of pagers, that's theory number two. What does that indicate? That Hezbollah pagers were hacked by Israel's intelligence agencies, and the pagers emitted a signal that caused a blast, a message to appear, and that message was from the Hezbollah leadership, prompting every person to virtually around the same time check the pager. And in some instances, because people were reading, there are facial injuries. In some instances, there are injuries on the waist, around the waist, in the hip pocket or in the front pocket area if the pagers were kept in the front pocket. And that message activated the explosive charge leading to the explosion. Batteries, violent explosion is theory number three. The lithium battery overheated and triggered an explosion. But why would every battery overheat exactly at the same time or around the same time across Lebanon? In some instances, there are reports just coming in that some of the fighters had the same pagers of the same lot even in Syria. But then that would indicate that the consignment came from the same source and went to the same target. A bug in the pager caused the battery to overheat and triggered the explosive. That's the information that's coming in.